I just want you to see this. Halt grabs Erster and he dashes and he doesn't go anywhere. We are coming off of the heels of a pretty frustrating meta to a lot of people, and although we don't know exactly how it's going to change right now, we are pretty sure that the Diva Juno type comps are going to be way less effective this time around. So as we kind of leave this meta and hopefully it gets a little better overall, I do want to take a look at one particular meta from a while ago that was, how you say, extremely silly. And what you guys are looking at right here is, in fact, the Double Shield Doomfist comps from the Overwatch League 2019 playoffs. Now, I wanted to look at this because, one, I think it's really funny. I think a lot of people have probably never seen this comp before since they're new to Overwatch 2. And I like doing meta analysis, but, you know, there's only one meta ever really at a time, so why not go back into the depths and find some of, I think, the funniest, worst metas possible, and I think that this meta definitely falls under, I would say it's definitely one of the worst metas I think we've ever had. It is super explosive, super volatile. It is stitched together with I don't even know, like toothpaste and floss, basically. So what you guys are looking at, I'm just going to play this over here, and I'm going to talk to you about the general game plan of these comps. So remember that the Owl playoffs were determined by a balance patch that came with 222. Now, I'm pretty sure that Stage 4 was actually played in 222, and there was some kind of balance change here or there. I think the release of Sigma definitely put a wrench into everything. But what happened here is that after a year plus of GOAT's compositions, I think it was very hard for a lot of teams to adapt to new styles because the game has really fundamentally changed from that point. So I think that a lot of teams really wanted to have something that was much similar to what they had been playing the entire season. So even though Hyper Sustain is dead, Hard Rush is still definitely possible to play. And that is where this composition is coming from. It is a combination of trying to sustain through fights and use lots of survivability while also looking for insane low time to kill kills with your Doomfists and your Reapers and stuff like that. It is this weird amalgamation just trying to come up with stuff. So I want to run you through every character's role in this comp and generally how it plays. So what you're seeing here is kind of like the pure mirror composition where they're both going to be playing this because neither team has a positional advantage so much. This is kind of the general best brawly variant of these tanks. Now, this meta, in my opinion, was absolutely determined by the two tanks because Ori and Sigma had insane synergy with each other. Their shields were crazy. You can see it right here. Experimental Barrier had 1500 health at the time. Release Sigma was just absolutely bonkers broken. He had a lot of things. I don't think it was in this variant by the time this was played, but when he released, his Flux could not be canceled in any form or fashion, even if they killed him, which is insane. So yeah, these two tanks were just super crazy. Ori Pull is one of the most versatile abilities in the game. You've probably already seen it be comboed with almost everything in this kit, specifically with the Doomfist. But yeah, basically the idea here is that since shields are so good on these characters and so overbearing, and you do need to play these characters, they do not swap off these characters except only to touch. I mean, Gator is on ball because he has to get back to the point, but they are always playing around these characters. So the picks that are coming in are trying to determine what can we do to play with and against these characters. That is where this Doomfist comes in. Doomfist is the guy that is going to completely ignore the shields. It is almost like super forehead, like, okay, shields are super good. What do we do? What if we just went right through them? What if we just like one-shot people through them? That is why the Doomfist is in these compositions. Moss is my goat. Sorry, I had to say it. That's where the Doomfist is coming from. Then, of course, the Doomfist also is really, really good with Orisa, because pull into any Doomfist ability is going to be insanely good, right? You pull, you just punch the pull. Best case scenario, you kill somebody. Worst case scenario, you hit a fortified Orisa. Now remember, Fortify is also really good against Doomfist. It's really good against Sigma. So Orisa is like the rock in this composition. She is like basically trying to body block as much as possible for her team from these other characters. That is why these compositions, although they are on double shield, they are playing so close together, because if Ori is in the pull, she can pop Fortify at the center of it and stop the aggression and stop the punch, right? The other option to that is, if you know the Fortify is coming, is maybe don't even try the punch, maybe just slam uppercut in instead and see if you can catch somebody out that way, force other abilities. It's a pretty it's a fairly interesting dynamic, I think. Of course, the other character here is Reaper. Reaper for DPS is just super high close range. It goes really, really well in tank busting, especially if you're able to get that Fortify out early with the Doomfist. Reaper is really good at vulturing in and trying to finish off those kills, right? And then with the Doomfist Reaper DPS lineup, you just always are probably going to play this Lucio Moira variant, because both of them are pretty survivable. Lucio does really good job booping the Doomfist and booping the Reaper, stuff like that. Moira, again, super survivable. She can heal through shields. That is a really crucial element of why Moira is getting played here over like a Baptiste or an Ana or something like that, because she can ignore the shields, and that allows the comp to open up and brawl a little more without having to worry about these shields. Now, you may think to yourself, well, all double shield for the rest of Overwatch 1 for the remaining 2-3 years was like super slow, everything like that. And you are absolutely correct. People definitely figured out the power of other characters, and not just say other characters didn't get buffed. I mean, Ashe, I remember getting very sizable buffs to her primary fire, which made her and Mercy just like super, super good together and super slow with these comps. But remember, you have all of these players who are signed. That was a really good boop by Masa, showing exactly what I was talking about. Anyways, you have all these players who are signed for GOATs, and then you throw them into this meta that is not GOATs at all. I mean, the only characters that were getting played in GOATs with these characters, like with in these compositions, is Lucio, obviously, and sometimes, like very rarely, Moira. Moira was the character that it was Moira Brig Lucio at first when GOATs was first getting made. Actually, Gator was on that team, I'm pretty sure. GOATs the team, but it was replaced with Zen as the years went, or as the time went on. They figured out that Zen was much better for the kill potential, and you could keep him alive with just everybody else on the team, right? So that is kind of like where all of this is coming from, because I think that you will see the glimpses of teams figuring out better variants, but they aren't as practiced on them, and they're much more practiced on this, let's just run it down, and have better ability usage overall than super duper macro stuff. So that, I think, in my opinion, is why this composition ended up this way. This is why this weirdo, super strange mixing of styles ever ended up like this. So now that we have that out of the way, super long intro, let's talk about some specific areas, some places where I think it was silly, some places where they actually change it up and show you some of those glimpses of traditional double shield compositions, right? So first, I want to highlight this fight, because this was going to show the things that I was talking about a little bit earlier. It's a pretty like standard engage. So Shock are down. They're trying to come back in. Atlanta Reign already have ults. Remember, this is old Overwatch. You gained ults extremely quickly. You're going to see these Moiras have coalescence. It feels like twice a fight, honestly. Super chaotic, super, in my opinion, too much. But you saw, there you go. Erster tries to punch in. It gets Smurf's Fortify out instantly, which is really, really crucial because Gator now sees this while everybody is in that little hallway and they've burned the bongo. Now he knows that it's way better for him to use the flux here. He can catch way more people while they're in it. He's going to go in there. The Shock's Doomfist, they do find the Reaper and they do find Gator, but in that chaos, Erster is still alive, and Erster is the major kill threat, the Doomfist, right? He is very in and out style character. He has very high burst when he's in. He has all his cooldowns, but he has to get out and wait for all of them to come back. So he initiated the fight, got out safely, waited for his team to do everything, and then during the cleanup, right, even though the rain went down first, Erster came back with all of his abilities and is able to get people, right? That is kind of how this comp cycles with itself, right? Because Doomfist has some really, really low cooldowns. They're going to go and they're just going to keep hitting all their buttons and keep hitting all their buttons. Erster, I'm pretty sure, gets like 3 in this fight. They don't end up winning it, but like that is kind of what you're doing, right? You're kind of cycling your pressure overall with either your ultimates and your Doomfist and stuff like that. They don't always play Doomfist on some of the other maps, but I think the Doomfist is like the crucial big threat that you have to worry about. So yeah, that is kind of the general idea of what these comps are playing like. So now that we have that established, let's look at a weirdo version of it, because I think it's really interesting, the stuff that they try to play, especially Atlanta. Atlanta always tried to play some weirdo stuff on these payload maps where it was really hard to contest them. So what you guys are seeing right here is a Mei Bastion Ana BAP variant. Now, the backline here is here because it's way more defendable on Numbani defense, because it is way harder to rotate into them. Nobody really has high ground skips, and if, you know, Doomfist were to try to solo dive, instantly dead, nothing he can do. It would not be a very good idea, especially going into the super hard poke compositions. But this is honestly like baby's first poke meta, because this is very much designed around stopping rotations and disrupting them in the middle of it. You've got Halt, you have Ice Wall, which blocks off walls, you have Bastion, just super consistent, extreme kill pressure. You have Ana, who can nade people as they walk through. It's almost like they stack too many things on preventing the rotation. And that is like the idea that they're wanting to do here. That is like the whole thing about this comp is like, let us just dump, since we have better positional advantage, let's dump so many resources into preventing the rotation. And what you're going to see here is exactly that, right? So the Shock, they're getting ready, they have all the resources, they're trying to make sure they have them all. Now they have to go super quick, super big engage. Erster misses the wall, but it did force out the Moira fade, which is really important. Moth is a little behind. This shield is trying to block 2 people at once because they have 2 different sight lines. They have Mei and Ana on the back high ground behind this, and they have all the other people here trying to force them out. So trying to shield off this engage, really, really difficult, trying to go on from the point here. The Halt comes out afterwards, grabs the entire team, because Halt is a crazy ability that should not come back in the form that was in. If it were to ever come back, it should only have a radius of like 3 meters. This is unacceptable. It's just a crazy powerful ability. And Violet, again, having used Fade early because it was I don't want to say sloppy rotation. It wasn't a perfect rotation. They die. Now Violet is dead, and since Violet is the one that might potentially be able to get back, they actually are going to wait there and just completely stall it out. They cannot win this fight, and they do not want to do that rotation again. So literally, they're going to wait for Violet to respawn and then fade from under here. You see him? There he goes. That was a whole minute off the clock, and they have not even like fought anything. And the funniest thing in this entire interaction is that Violet is the closest to ult charge, because this was the only team taking damage. So Yeah, it's just a really really strange way to play this game that I think when this was obviously like growing pains of 222. This was like on one of the very first metas of 222. So some of this stuff is going to be, how you say, unpolished, and they definitely worked on trying to prevent these types of metas and these types of situations, although it's debatable about how well they actually did by the end of it. So that is just a really funny thing for me. Let's go ahead and look at this fight. I think this fight is interesting because they have both swapped over to the traditional variant. They are brawling, but I want to take a look at the defensibleness of what they were trying to do here. What in particular they were trying to defend. Because, they have a brawl comp, but they actually don't really want to push this corner, you can see. They push it out a little bit and then they go, that didn't really work, and they came back. And so they go ahead and they double barrier the corner, which is, classic double shield comp. And then while that's out, they bongo and beat. So what the idea of this is that they are going to, one, prevent them from walking into them because they have the health advantage. But two, it means that they can walk out a little bit away from the shields because the shields are protecting the bongo. Both shields were put out to protect the one bongo because the damage boost is that important. And of course, you can see that plan wasn't exactly great because Violet has Coalescence and he hard forces down the bongo in Coalescence because it can go through the shield. Now, Baby Bay ends up cleaning house because of the ult advantage, but that's just another example of just like extremely silly resource management where you were using your thing, like multiple ultimate abilities were coming out in relation to the one placeable, I guess, yes, it is an ultimate, but it's like a placeable thing on the map. And that was honestly like the MVP in that fight. That was the thing that they had to worry about the most. It is, when you look at it from these contexts, like some of these old Overwatch abilities and old interactions in Overwatch, it is a really kind of silly. In my opinion, it is more fun to play around the heroes and their abilities, not the ultimates that are, not the things that you place down or just these silly, less interactable type of things. I know some people may miss old Bongo, they miss old Ori, but you have to admit that this stuff was just so funny to watch sometimes. Speaking of funny to watch here, this is a terrible map that nobody likes, Horizon Lunar Colony. If you're new, you might never have played on this map. Lucky you. Basically, Atlanta Reign's whole idea here, I'm pretty sure, is that they want to build ults and EMP the super defensible. You can't really see it here, but there's a very defensible Bastion, Ana BAP, super hard to get through. They've got double shields on it, and they're trying to EMP it and break it, and then maybe Nano Blade, right? But it's because, and I just want you to see this. Halt grabs Erster from super far, like pretty much max range, and he dashes, and he doesn't go anywhere. See, like when your comp revolves around Halt in particular, I mean, like, it's just so funny. I mean, I want to watch that again. This is why, this is why I think this meta was just so funny, because you kind of have to play this other stuff, because this is so hard to break that you have to play these like super weird, like super ult dependent fights, right? We have to Nano Blade EMP to win this because it's so hard. How are we going to build Blade when this happens? You know what I mean? So that's why I think this comp is like extremely silly. It is so much time wasted, especially on these payload and 2CP maps. It is so much time wasted because they're literally like, look how hard they're struggling to build their ults here still. Like, they basically are going to get one chance at the end of the game. I'm pretty sure Dogman decides to nano because he was half, or Erster was half to it, but there's so much time wasted in these comps, and I think that is just like one of the things that is underrated. Now, here you go. We are at a minute and a half left on the point. We're 2.5 minutes in. Erster is only 71% to blade, and I think that Atlanta recognized that San Francisco do not have many ults, so they decide to just rip it and ship it with the EMP. I think that is probably a pretty good call, because otherwise they're going to be playing into way more stuff. And that is kind of like how these fights are going. So they actually nanoed that bash. Actually, they didn't nano that bash. I don't know why it looked like that. But now the fight is finally open. They finally take almost 3 minutes to get the ults that they needed. And of course, the shock just still kind of ruined them. Now, I think afterwards they kind of trade. And since Atlanta have the ults to bear, they can finally get through this stuff. But yeah, this map in particular shows a lot of problems with these old double shield comps and also the old map types that we played with. Now, if you were to think on Watchpoint Gibraltar, where would a double shield comp want to play? If your answer was up on the high ground, overlooking the payload to get some poke, maybe your answer was underneath on the mega, all the way down halfway through the point, and they bunker in there. You would maybe be right later in Overwatch history. But right now, the actual answer is, let's play here and bomb rush them. Erster looks like he's the bait. Erster is the bait. He kind of puts himself out there and goes, hey, look at me. I'm setting up over here. I'm going to get ready to hit you guys later. What actually happens is that Atlanta hit them first and from behind, and it is just this crazy brawl on the point. I don't think I have ever seen an entire team fight happen right here ever, outside of one of these kind of metas. So that is just another really silly quirk of these comps, is that they can kind of pick and choose exactly where they want to play because they go so fast and so explosive. I think this is probably really good for Atlanta because it takes 40 seconds off the clock. And they're going to get another fight in the places where they would have probably taken the fights anyways. So they just get some extra time save. It is a pretty good call from them. Here, I'm trying to remember. Oh, I wanted to point this out because even though we are playing this brawl variant, it's actually really funny because we have traditional Sigma off angles already showing up. Sigma is just up here. There is no way for them to come get him without sending a full army to do it, basically. At that point, he can rotate away, and he's perfectly fine. He's wasted a lot of space and time. But this is a classic Sigma off angle. He's super survivable. He can stay wherever he wants by himself. And you create that really, really super good crossfire. He gets a really good angle over the shields here, so that when they do the pull combo stuff, he gets a lot of really good splash damage concentrated on them. Mix it with the rest of his team. This is double shield. Right? That's exactly what this is. This is something that you are going to see from very good Sigmas forever, for years and years and years before Overwatch 2 happened. I think it's just really interesting that it's still, people are recognizing places to do it earlier, like before it's really the hard meta, right? So this was a really good call from Gator because it gets him 2 kills, lots of distraction, a lot of resources out. They win the fight. I think it's just really interesting to see it develop here in this. And then I wanted to show, this is very silly. You may remember the image of Window, Sigma Shield, Ori Shield, Bongo, Mercy Boost on top of this with a Bastion, right? Some things never change. Even with a rush composition, we are still up on ship, and they recognize that it is still much better to hold up here and hold these extremely defensible, spammy positions, even with a brawl comp, right? So I think that these series show you that the brawl comp, like the Doomfist Reaper stuff, is really just not the optimal way to play this stuff, because they've already started to figure out with these that the positions and the stuff they can get out of it are probably way more valuable than just throwing themselves at each other and doing this brawl variant. So yeah, that was a really silly thing from that one. Let's go ahead and we're gonna look at another weird variant here. This is Symmetra showing up. Now this is, again, another variant of survivability. They recognize that this position is really, really hard to take. They can play sit farther back. Masa's on the BAP, Dogman's on the Moira. It is full resource healing based. Moira is here just for survivability, extra resource to help keep the sim up because she requires a lot of resources in comparison with both of her tanks, right? And their idea here is to play slow and build beam. And it works. It really does work, right? They keep her up. It is extremely hard to get to her, even with the Doomfist and the Reaper. And she is able to just clean up with full beam all the time. They continue to win. Urster puts a lot of pressure on with the Doomfist on them trying to come inside. And it is so hard to contest what they are doing. That is double shield. That is traditional double shield comps. I think that, you know, a lot of people might say that Atlanta shouldn't have won this series, but I honestly think that their comps overall understood the meta or the strengths of the characters that they were playing more. Now, when I think Shock had to fight Atlanta again, or Atlanta just fell to some other team later in later in the playoffs, but I do think that the Reign understood, even though they didn't have the star-studded lineup like the Shock, they kind of understood how to play this more. And then I think the funniest comp here, this is just poke. This is just straight up poke. There is nobody here anywhere close to playing this brawl style. Mercy would very often be placed with these compositions because it was easy to keep her up, easy to keep her pocket up, easy to keep blue beam on her target because she wouldn't have to heal them that much. When Ashe got buffed, it was mostly Ashe because she could one tap with a Mercy pocket, and her fire rate was extremely high. Bastion, again, he also found his way, especially early in Double Shield, but later in Double Shield, kind of fell more out of favor, especially when Zenyatta and Brig stuff started getting played a little more. But yeah, here, the idea is, again, it's disruption. It is concussive blast. It is Bastion when they're rotating. It is halt. You saw they tried to halt the bridge here, right? You see, oh, they're rotating right. Pokepo is going to send the halt. He almost gets Striker, but Striker is able to get away. That's kind of what they're trying to do, right? Now, the more that they let them set up, I think Baby Bay probably... Oh, they actually come to take this fight right on. But yeah, that's the problem with the Bastion comps, is that they get stuck. And if they're able to get onto them like they did, it just... Yeah, Moth gets 3 in 1 boop because there's nowhere for them to go. It's kind of feast or famine. Other double shield comps are going to become much more flexible and ready for this, but this is the beginning. Like, nobody's ever played this style of comp before. There were obviously poke comps, sure, but you know, nobody had tried to play like this, at least in a very long time. So again, I don't blame any team for really not understanding all the value that everything gets. And of course, while we're in Rome, let's just go ahead and watch the end of this series. This is one of the most famous matches in Overwatch League history, down to the absolute wire final fight. The San Francisco Shock all accidentally get off the point, and I don't know if they show it in this VOD. Moth makes the single most heartbreaking face ever in reaction to it. This was an incredible series. It showed off a lot of different stuff. It was the underdogs winning over them. That is not even the Moth face. That was just Moth being sad. But yeah, it's a really interesting series. This one was. I was gonna watch the grand finals, but the grand finals is boring. I think that the Reign really had it. This game. And of course, you know, I'm from around here, so let's go Atlanta. They weren't able to keep it going, but it was a very, very cool upset, and you know, one that can really only happen when a meta shifts so drastically at the end of the playoff season. So that is it. Basically, Overwatch comps over the years have definitely had their ups and downs. There are better ones, there are obviously worse ones, and there are ones that are just kind of unrefined, honestly. Now that we are in a patch cycle that is way faster and quicker, The meta is defined a lot more by early impressions and easier to use tactics because we don't have a lot of time to marinate them or marinate with them all the time. I mean, the Diva speed ring boost stuff has already been fixed. There's a high likelihood Diva comps will not be nearly as oppressive or even played anymore. Ramattra variants with Juno might be the way to go. But that is not to say that, you know, if we had another month or two of that comp, that something couldn't have changed. You know, as with Overwatch 1, there were a lot of not very substantial changes. There were not a lot of changes for a while. And even though that was the case, the meta still developed and shifted a lot of times over that period of time. So basically, what I want to say with this video is that when a meta is bad, it's not always going to be bad forever, regardless of what the devs are or aren't doing, because the meta is defined by the community and the people who play it. And there are always going to be bad metas, but it is not always the end of the world. It may be sticky for a little bit. It may not take, it might not be a quick turnaround about how the meta shifts, but it will probably always shift in some form or fashion over the years. So anyways, this is probably going to become like a mini series where I just take a look at these, because I think that looking at old Overwatch comps is really, really funny, especially the further back you go, because Overwatch played a lot differently then. A lot of people say that GOATS was the thing that got people to play Overwatch like the modern era of Overwatch. So stuff around that time and before it are just kind of like people really not knowing what to do and not having the best team play and being a lot more individual. And there were a lot of characters in the game that I think add a lot more dynamics that really weren't added yet. So they're just kind of like feast or famine comps along the way. This was like kind of that, but you could see the glimpses of them figuring it out along the way. I just thought it was interesting. So with that, thank you guys so much for watching this. If you want to watch more, please comment about what matches or comps you would like to see. Like and subscribe while you're at it. I really appreciate it. I stream live, twitch.tv/Lane Hemingway. I'll probably start doing these a little more live. This one wasn't, just because I had some extra time today and I wanted to get this done for this week. So anyways, Tuesdays, Thursdays, Saturdays, twitch.tv/Lane Hemingway. And if you want to send me a replay code to look at, a hot take, a rework idea, anything like that, join my Discord. It is down below. Okay, thank you guys so much for watching. Have a good day.